I still remember the exact moment my hands started shaking. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had just opened the mailbox to find a cream-colored envelope with elegant gold lettering. My daughter Ursula's wedding invitation. I tore it open with a smile on my face, eager to see the final design we had discussed months ago. But as my eyes scanned the card, my heart dropped into my stomach. The guest list on the back did not include my name. The line that read, "Father of the bride," had someone else's name on it. Greg, my ex-wife's husband. I had agreed to pay $30,000 for the venue, a stunning garden estate that Ursula had dreamed about since she was a little girl, and yet somehow I was not even invited to walk through its gates. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you believe that every parent deserves respect, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you are going to want to hear how this story unfolds. Let me take you back to where this all began, because the truth is far more complicated than I ever imagined. I married Diane when we were both 23 years old. We were young, hopeful, and convinced that love would conquer everything. 2 years later, Ursula came into our lives, and I thought my world was complete. She was this tiny, perfect human being with her mother's dark hair and my stubborn chin. I remember holding her in the hospital, promising her that I would always be there, no matter what. For 10 years, I thought we were a happy family. I worked as an electrical engineer, putting in long hours to provide a comfortable life. Diane stayed home with Ursula until she started school, then took a part-time job at a local real estate agency. We had our struggles like any couple, but I believed we were solid. Then, I discovered the truth. Diane had been having an affair with her colleague, a man named Greg, for almost 2 years. I found out through a text message she accidentally left open on our shared computer. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of the lies, but because of how long she had looked me in the eyes while hiding such a massive secret. When we divorced, Ursula was 12 years old. I could have fought for custody. My lawyer told me I had a strong case, but I made a decision that I thought was protecting my daughter. I did not want her to sit in a courtroom forced to choose between her parents. I did not want her to hear the ugly details of why our marriage fell apart. So I agreed to let her live primarily with Diane, with the understanding that I would have her every weekend and holidays. I moved into an apartment 20 minutes away from our old house, close enough that I could be there whenever Ursula needed me, close enough that she would never feel like I had abandoned her. Those first few years after the divorce were actually beautiful in their own way. Every Friday evening, I would pick Ursula up from school. We developed our own traditions. Saturday mornings meant pancakes at this little diner called Maple Street Kitchen. She always ordered the same thing, chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream and a side of bacon. We would sit in the same booth by the window, and she would tell me everything about her week, her friends, her classes, the boy who pulled her hair on the playground. Sunday afternoons were for movies. We watched everything together, from animated films to superhero adventures. I kept every ticket stub in a shoebox under my bed. I also started a photo album documenting every moment we shared. Birthday parties, school plays, soccer games. I was there for all of it. I never missed a single performance or match. I sat in those uncomfortable bleachers and cheered until my voice went hoarse. I paid child support religiously, never missing a payment. When Diane complained that expenses were rising, I increased the amount without argument. I wanted Ursula to have everything she needed. I wanted her to know that even though her parents were not together, her father loved her unconditionally. But things started to shift when Ursula entered high school. She was 15 when Diane married Greg. Suddenly there was a new family dynamic. Greg had 2 children from his previous marriage, a boy and a girl, who were a few years younger than Ursula. Our house became their house. Our traditions started competing with new ones. Ursula became busier. She had homework, friends, activities. Our weekends together grew shorter. Sometimes she would cancel at the last minute, saying she had a project due or a party to attend. I told myself this was normal. Teenagers need space. They need to build their own lives. I did not want to be the clingy father who could not let go, so I adapted. Instead of weekend visits, I called her every Wednesday evening. At first, our conversations lasted an hour, then 30 minutes, then 15. She always seemed distracted, like she was waiting for the call to end so she could get back to her real life. But I kept calling. I kept showing up. I kept believing that our bond was strong enough to survive the distance. Ursula graduated from college with a degree in marketing. I attended the ceremony sitting in the back row because I did not want to cause any awkwardness with Diane and Greg. I watched my daughter walk across that stage, and my heart swelled with pride. She had grown into such a remarkable young woman. She landed a job at a respected marketing firm downtown. I took her out to dinner to celebrate just the two of us. For a few hours, it felt like old times. She talked about her goals, her dreams, her excitement about starting her career. I listened and nodded and tried to memorize every detail of her face, knowing that moments like these were becoming rare. A year into her job, she met Derek. He worked in the same building, something in finance. She mentioned him casually at first, then more frequently. After 6 months of dating, she brought him to Thanksgiving dinner at Diane's house. I was invited, which surprised me. I think Ursula wanted to maintain the appearance of a united family. Derek was polite. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, answered my questions with rehearsed precision. But there was something distant about him, like he had already decided I was not important enough to truly engage with. I brushed off the feeling, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just nervous meeting his girlfriend's father. Over the next 2 years, I saw Derek exactly twice more. Once at Christmas, once at Ursula's birthday dinner. Both times he was cordial, but cold. I tried to initiate conversations about his interests, his family, his plans for the future. He gave me nothing, one-word answers, polite smiles that never reached his eyes. Then came the engagement announcement. Ursula texted me. Not a phone call, not a visit. A text message with a photo of her ring and the words, "He proposed." I said yes. I stared at my phone for a long time, trying to process the mix of emotions flooding through me. Joy for my daughter, hurt that she had not called, worry about what this meant for our already fragile relationship. I texted back my congratulations, adding that I would love to take her and Derek out to celebrate. She replied 3 days later with a vague, "Maybe soon." Soon never came. A month after the engagement, Diane organized a family meeting to discuss wedding plans. I received a formal invitation, which felt strange given that I was the bride's father, but I showed up determined to be supportive. The meeting was held at Diane and Greg's house. When I arrived, everyone was already seated in the living room. Diane, Greg, Ursula, Derek, and Derek's parents. I was the last to arrive, even though I had come 10 minutes early. They had started without me. I sat in the only empty chair positioned slightly outside the circle. The conversation flowed around me like I was not there. They discussed caterers, photographers, color schemes, decisions that had clearly been made in previous conversations I was not invited to. Then Ursula mentioned the venue, Rosewood Estate. I knew the place. It was a gorgeous property with manicured gardens, a historic mansion, and a reputation for hosting fairy tale weddings. It was also extremely expensive, $30,000 just for the venue rental. Diane's eyes slid toward me. I recognized that look. It was the same look she used to give me when she wanted something but did not want to ask directly. Greg was talking about how he would cover the catering and flowers, positioning himself as the generous benefactor. I understood my role. I was expected to pay for the venue, and I agreed, not because of Diane's manipulation, but because I wanted to give my daughter the wedding she deserved. I wanted to contribute something meaningful to her special day. I wrote the deposit check that evening, $10,000. The remaining $20,000 was due 2 weeks before the wedding. After the meeting, I tried to involve myself in the planning process. I texted Ursula asking if she needed help choosing music for the reception. She replied that Derek had already handled it. I offered to help compile the guest list for my side of the family. She said she would send me the details later. Later never came. My phone calls went unanswered. My text messages received brief, delayed responses. I started to feel like a stranger begging for scraps of attention from his own daughter. But I kept trying. I kept hoping. I kept telling myself that she was just stressed with wedding planning, that things would get better once the big day arrived. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found the invitation in my mailbox. I have already told you about that moment, but let me describe what happened next. After seeing that my name was not on the guest list, after seeing Greg listed as father of the bride, I called Ursula immediately. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I called again. Same result. I sent a text message asking her to please call me back, that we needed to talk urgently. 3 hours later, she responded with 5 words, "We need to talk, but not now." I could not wait. I drove to her apartment, my mind racing with questions and fears. When I arrived, I knocked on her door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Finally, I heard footsteps, but it was not Ursula who opened the door. It was Derek. He looked at me with an expression that was almost pitying. "She does not want to see you right now," he said. "Maybe give her some space." "She is my daughter," I replied. "I need to understand what is happening." Derek shrugged. "That is between you two," and he closed the door in my face. I stood in that hallway for 2 hours. Other residents passed by, giving me curious looks. I did not care. I was not leaving until I got answers. Eventually, Diane showed up. She must have received a call from Ursula or Derek. She walked toward me with that familiar expression of controlled exasperation, like I was a problem she had to manage. "Marcus, you need to go home," she said. "Not until someone explains why I am being excluded from my own daughter's wedding." Diane sighed. Ursula made her choice. She wants Greg to walk her down the aisle. He has been there for her during the important years, the years you missed. "I never missed anything," I said, my voice rising. "I was there every weekend. I called every week. I paid for everything she ever needed. Money is not presents, Marcus." Diane's voice was cold, rehearsed. "You were never really there, not in the ways that mattered." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. "What are you talking about? I showed up for every soccer game, every school play, every birthday party." Diane shook her head slowly. "That is not how Ursula remembers it. She remembers a father who chose his career over his family, who left because he did not want the responsibility of raising a child, who sent checks instead of showing up." "That is a lie," I whispered. "You know that is a lie." "What I know," Diane said, "is that my daughter has made her decision, and you need to respect it." She turned and walked into Ursula's apartment, closing the door behind her. I stood there stunned, trying to process what I had just heard. Ursula believed I had abandoned her. She believed I had chosen my career over her. She believed lies that her mother had apparently been feeding her for years. I went home and wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, handwritten on actual paper. I poured everything into those pages. I explained why her mother and I had divorced, something I had never told her because I wanted to protect her from the ugly truth. I described my fight to stay in her life the weekends. I cherished the phone calls I made religiously. I told her about the photo album I had kept, the ticket stubs I had saved, the birthday cards I had written every single year. I gathered evidence, photographs of us at the diner, at soccer games, at her school events, receipts from gifts I had bought her, cards she had given me when she was younger filled with crayon drawings and declarations of love. I put everything in a large envelope and mailed it to her apartment. 3 days later, the envelope was returned. Returned to sender. Refused. I tried calling again. The call would not go through. I checked social media and discovered that Ursula had blocked me on every platform. My own daughter had erased me from her digital life as thoroughly as she was erasing me from her wedding. That night, I sat alone in my apartment surrounded by memories of a relationship I was apparently the only one who valued. The photo album lay open on my coffee table. I turned the pages, slowly looking at image after image of a father and daughter who once seemed inseparable. There was Ursula at age 7, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair. There she was at 10, proudly holding the first place ribbon from her science fair project. At 13, blowing out birthday candles while I stood behind her, grinning like the proudest dad in the world. Where had it all gone wrong? How had the little girl who used to run into my arms every Friday evening become a woman who could block my number without a second thought? I asked myself a hard question that night. Was I willing to continue funding my own exclusion? Was I going to write a $20,000 check so that another man could walk my daughter down an aisle I was not even allowed to watch? The answer came to me with surprising clarity. No, I was not. The next morning, I called Rosewood Estate. I explained that I needed to cancel the reservation. The event coordinator sounded confused. "Sir, the wedding is in 12 days. Are you sure?" "I am sure." I said, "The reservation is under my name. The deposit was paid with my credit card. I am exercising my right to cancel." There was a pause, some keyboard clicking. "Yes, I can confirm that you are the primary account holder. I can process the cancellation and refund your deposit minus a $500 administrative fee." "That is fine. May I ask the reason for the cancellation? We like to keep records for quality assurance." I thought about how to answer. Finally, I said, "I was not invited to the wedding." The coordinator did not respond for a moment. Then softly, "I am very sorry to hear that, sir. I will process this immediately." I hung up the phone and sat in silence. I had just canceled my daughter's dream venue less than 2 weeks before her wedding. Part of me felt guilty, but a larger part felt something I had not experienced in a long time: self-respect. I did not make this decision out of revenge or spite. I made it because I refused to be a silent financier of my own erasure. If my presence was not wanted, then neither was my money. 5 days later, Diane called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Finally, I answered. "What have you done?" she screamed. "The venue canceled on us." "They said you withdrew the payment. Do you have any idea what you have done?" "I was not invited to the wedding," I said calmly. "Why would I pay for an event I cannot attend?" "This is not about you, Marcus. This is about Ursula. You are ruining her special day because of your petty ego." "My ego?" I felt my composure slipping. "You spent years poisoning my daughter against me. You made her believe I abandoned her. And now you expect me to fund a celebration where another man takes my place. No, Diane. I am done being used." She hung up without another word. Greg called an hour later, threatening legal action. I told him to go ahead and contact his lawyer. The contract was in my name. The payments came from my account. I had every right to cancel. He never called again. The wedding happened anyway 12 days later. They found a smaller venue, some community center on the outskirts of town. I heard about it through a cousin who was still talking to both sides of the family. The decorations were modest. The guest list was trimmed. The fairy tale garden wedding became a budget reception in a rented hall. I did not attend. I was not invited, and I would not have gone even if I had been. Instead, I drove to the mountains that morning. I hiked a trail I used to take Ursula on when she was young. I sat on a boulder overlooking a valley and let myself feel everything. The grief of losing my daughter, the anger at the injustice, the strange peace that comes from finally standing up for yourself. 6 months passed. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, who specialized in parental alienation. She helped me understand that I was not alone, that thousands of parents experience this kind of systematic exclusion. She taught me that I could not force my daughter to see the truth, but I could control how I responded to the situation. I joined a support group for alienated parents. Hearing other people's stories helped me realize that my experience, while painful, was not unique. There were fathers who had not seen their children in decades, mothers who had been completely erased from their families. We shared our grief and our small victories and our hopes for reconciliation. Then, 6 months after the wedding, I received an email from Ursula. The subject line read, "Why?" The message was brief. "I need to understand why you sabotaged my wedding. You ruined the most important day of my life because you were angry about not being invited. How could you do that to your own daughter?" I read those words several times, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. She still did not understand. She still believed the narrative her mother had constructed, but at least she was reaching out. At least there was a crack in the wall. I spent 2 days crafting my response. I did not defend myself aggressively. I did not attack her mother. I simply told the truth as clearly and gently as I could. I explained that I had been present for every important moment of her childhood, that I had never chosen my career over her, that the story she believed was not accurate. I told her I had evidence, photographs and documents and cards that I would be happy to share whenever she was ready. I ended the email with these words, "When you are ready to hear my side, I will be here, but I will not beg for a place in your life that should have been mine from the start." I love you, Ursula. I always have. I always will. But I have also learned to love myself enough to refuse being treated as less than I deserve. She never replied, and that is okay. I have made peace with the uncertainty. I still keep the photo album on my coffee table. I still hope that one day my daughter will knock on my door ready to listen with an open heart. But I am no longer waiting in pain. I am living my life, building new connections, finding joy in unexpected places. I learned something important through all of this. Love is not measured by how much you sacrifice. It is not about erasing yourself to make others comfortable. True love, including love for yourself, requires boundaries. It requires the courage to say no when you are being mistreated. Maybe one day Ursula will understand that. Maybe she will look back and realize that her father was not the villain he was made out to be. Or maybe she will carry her mother's version of events forever. I cannot control that. What I can control is how I live the rest of my life, and I choose to live it with dignity, with hope, and with my heart still open for the possibility of reconciliation. If you have experienced something similar, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your pain is valid. Your story matters, and standing up for yourself does not make you selfish. It makes you human. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own dignity? What would you have done in my situation? Leave your answers in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. If you want to hear more stories about family betrayal and finding strength in unexpected places, subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story today. Whatever you're going through, I hope you find the courage to stand up for yourself even when it hurts. Take care of yourselves and remember you deserve to be treated with love and respect. Always.